Now, this is of course going to be a follow-up video to the one I did last weekend, asking the question of when and where this new trilogy Rian Johnson is going to create could possibly take us. And let me start by saying thank you for all the great responses. As I've said before, I do try to read them all, especially for these discussion videos, and reply to as many as, well, time in my life allows me to. But just know that even if I didn't respond to you or your comment isn't brought up in this video, I did read it and I do appreciate you taking the time to give your thoughts on whatever video it might be. Okay, now let's jump right into it with the top rated comment from last weekend's question video, and it came to us from Luke Skywalker II, who said, "Love this video, Thor. For me, I think this trilogy should go really deep into the past of Star Wars, even beyond the Old Republic era, like the times of, if they even exist in the new canon, the Rakata Infinite Empire, or even into the very foundation of the Jedi Order, and how the Sith came to be in the first place. I have always loved the mythological part of Star Wars, and how the past very much influences the future, and it would be very interesting to explore this area of the lore of where it all truly began. And as someone who appreciates and enjoys all the deep lore Star Wars creates, I, and many others, love the idea of the trilogy going back into the founding of the Jedi Order, and likely also about how the Sith first came into being. And I think there's actually a really good chance of something like this happening, because I do fully expect The Last Jedi, and Episode 9 after it, to begin to rewrite the known history of the Jedi, or the one the old expanded universe gave us. And it makes perfect sense that the guy that would make such a trilogy would be the one who is now starting that change with the current sequel trilogy. As I said in the initial video, Rian Johnson really is the man deciding the future of Star Wars right now, at least in the movies, which, for a majority of people, is what matters the most. Though I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention Dave Filoni here, who continues to do a fantastic job with the animated world of Star Wars. Anyway, I do know there are some of you, or maybe a lot of you, that hate Disney for wiping away the old EU, but the simple truth is Lucasfilm is not going to limit themselves, or the stories they can tell, by keeping everything from the history of the expanded universe intact. I for one am at least happy that they have, and likely will continue, to cherry pick things from what was erased and include them in the new canon, even if they do get altered somewhat to fit the story in which they are being reintroduced. I mean, I would be stunned if characters like Revan don't find their way back into the canon, and soon, because flat out, Lucasfilm would be stupid to ignore all the fans of these characters who want to see them again, and, of course, the potential to make a lot of money off of them. Nevertheless, I do think when they make their return, their stories will change quite a bit, and honestly, I think one that is going to change rather drastically is the beginning of the Jedi and Sith, starting with what is revealed about them in The Last Jedi, and then completed maybe in this new trilogy, and that change may be so drastic that it will be unrecognizable from the EU version, though I could of course be wrong. Now, one way or the other, I do think this new trilogy will meet the qualifications left by one of my favorite comments to this last video that came to us from Odin the German Shepherd, who has a great channel of his own dedicated to the best named German Shepherd in history, who simply said, "I just hope there are a lot of lightsabers, force use, Sith, Jedi, and space battles. No more sand." And I think it's important that, even though we've been promised new and different, that this still look and feel like Star Wars, that there will be familiar aspects and that they don't deviate too far from what we know and love, and what the more casual fan or average moviegoer truly expects from a Star Wars movie. Which means, even though there are pretty much endless possibilities for what this trilogy could be that I think diehard fans would love to see, you do have to be careful that whatever you choose resonates with everybody, especially with this being a trilogy, because imagine the nightmare Disney and Lucasfilm will face if the first movie of this new trilogy doesn't connect with the non-fans. I mean, then what do? Radically alter what the next two parts are, or just continue to hope for the best? And this next suggestion, which comes to us from Alex Dufresne, might somewhat fall into that category of something that might have difficulty resonating with the average moviegoer, even though I'd personally love to see it because Thrawn is, in my opinion, one of the best Star Wars characters of all time. Anyway, he said, "I think Thrawn's galaxy, or part of the galaxy, and the Chiss ascendancy could easily retain the classic Star Wars feel and be accessible for movie-only fans. Only problem I can see is that people would think it's just Avatar 2, since the Chiss are blue-skinned aliens. And depending on how they approached it, it could certainly have the Star Wars feel, as Alex suggests. And since there were others who brought up something similar to this, I think a lot of fans would love exploring the Chiss and going into the unknown regions with this trilogy. Again though, I still think you'd have to find a way to include, simply put, things like lightsabers, wielded by Jedi, Sith, or maybe some other faction we've yet to discover. And in Thrawn's book, he does say there are other dangers out there in the galaxy, and why can't there be another saber-wielding Force user unlike any we've seen before, which could really make this trilogy interesting not only for average fans, but us hardcore fans. And then again, maybe they really will do something completely different, as Josh Dodge suggests, and throw caution to the wind and do something that we literally couldn't even begin to guess at right now. Sure, I do think they'll play it relatively safe with this trilogy, but I could of course be wrong, and maybe they'll let Rian Johnson run wild with some crazy idea that he has floating around in his head right now, even though, to this point anyway, Lucasfilm has been very controlling of their directors. And as Kimmy Skywalker points out, maybe we shouldn't even get too excited about anything Rian Johnson does in the Star Wars universe until we at least see The Last Jedi. Now, one idea I was surprised that not many people outside of the Golden Ticket brought up is something to do with the Mandalorians, because doesn't everyone pretty much love Mandalorians? And I like the idea that they could delve into the history of the Darksaber and to bring Tar Vizsla to the big screen, because this has the potential to be an amazing war, and this is called Star Wars, that could be shown between the Jedi and the Mandalorians. And finally, people outside of the more hardcore fandom could see just how badass Mandalorians really are. However, though we didn't offer up any predictions, I think James Conroy's comments sums up my feelings on this matter best. He's just excited we're going to get another Star Wars trilogy, and so am I. Because even though I liked Rogue One, the first standalone Star Wars movie we got, the trilogy feels like a format Star Wars should always hold to. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't do anthology or standalone movies, or that it doesn't work for Star Wars. I'm just saying I'm happy we're going to get another trilogy, even though it isn't one that's going to be in the Star Wars saga or Skywalker trilogy line, because it means we're going to get another grand, sweeping Star Wars story and adventure that will span the course of 3 movies. And as James said, that's exciting. Well, that's all I've got for you this time, and this is again where I say thank you to all of those who commented, not only on the initial video, but on any of my videos. I love talking Star Wars and being able to do it with so many other great fans of this franchise. It truly is a pleasure for me. And once again, I'm going to ask for suggestions for what next week's topic can be for us all to discuss. So leave your idea below in the comments, and maybe it'll be what we're all talking about next week. And until next time, thanks for watching.